Welcome to 18th Century Cooking. I'm your host, John Townsend, and we're doing a very special episode today. Normally, I cook a larger kind of a dish, and we have a recipe. And the other day, we had a big episode in here, the finish-up episode for the cabin, where we made a meal with multiple things. But today, it's just you and me, and I'm going to cook my favorite sort of comfort food from the 18th century. Such a simple and wonderful dish. It's called toasted cheese from John Knott's cookbook in 1723. Later on, it's called a Welsh rabbit. Just a fun recipe and so easy, so wonderful. But I really kind of wanted to talk about the spot here today. We've done cooking episodes from the outdoors, out in the woods. We've got an open face shelter. Some of those cooking episodes we've done were from the open face shelter. That's a wonderful spot to cook from. We cook in the German kitchen. That's a set that's based upon an 18th century kitchen from Germany. There's a wonderful example at the Frontier Culture Museum down in Virginia. We've also done it from historic sites like Mount Vernon and Conner Prairie and Gunston Hall, all these wonderful historic sites. But I wanted a spot to cook and a place to cook that was just exactly like what they would have had in the 18th century, especially folks out here in the frontier. And so that was one of the reasons why we built this whole cabin, so that we could do more of the feeling of cooking in the 18th century than just the recipe itself, right? I think there's something really, really special about getting history not from a book, and that's great, but feeling history in a totally different way. And this cabin, building the cabin, being out here, once it was done, I've spent some time out here just around the fire, and then cooking in it is an experience that's just completely different than anything you would get in a book, and very, very fulfilling in a new kind of way. So if you watched the last episode where we were finishing up the cabin, we finished it as the snow was coming down. This is not something, most of this cabin is either cut logs or mud. And you can't work with mud when it's cold out, when it's freezing. And so we truly finished it up just in time. And it made me really appreciate and understand that idea of people, especially in the frontier. They have to get in and out of the weather when the winter comes, and you only have just so much time to do it. It's got to be done. You have to go as fast as possible if the weather is coming, which it was in this case. Truly a new respect for how much they had to go through to just survive. And how wonderful it is to come in from out of the weather. You get around this hearth, and this hearth is so warm. It's so hot. You have to step back from it. It is something to experience. It truly is. John Knott's recipe isn't the most simple recipe for Welsh rabbit, but I really enjoy it. He calls for Cheshire cheese, a fat Cheshire cheese. So this Cheshire cheese is very creamy. We don't have anything quite like it here in North America that I've found yet. Also, you can kind of use equal measures. We've got the Cheshire cheese. We're going to add in to the Cheshire cheese, we've got butter. That's nice and cold, and I've chopped it up fine. We've also got breadcrumbs, so white, like he calls for the crumb of a penny loaf, which is a small loaf of bread. And the last ingredient, he calls for an egg yolk. And in John Knott's recipe, he doesn't specify the egg yolk. This one's hard-boiled, as some of the later recipes specifically call for, so I went ahead and we've got a boiled egg yolk. We're going to put all these ingredients together in a bowl, or he calls for a mortar, and to mash them all up so they're all consistent, spread throughout. And then we take that spread and we put it on top of our pre-toasted bread. And that we've toasted it here by the fire. And let me tell you, there's something really special about bread that's toasted over an open fire. Now this mixture comes up a little bit dry when it's cold like this, so I'm going to put it over the fire just enough to melt it and bring it together. Then we take our spread, we put it on top of our toasts, and then we need to reheat this to melt that mixture down into our toast. Oh, it's so good. And for that, we're going to use a salamander, which is a red hot hunk of iron. We've heated that up in the fire, red hot. We pass that slowly over our cheese. It's going to melt that down into it. Then it's done. We need to eat it while it's hot. I love these. It's got such a wonderful smell, especially on a cold day like today. Still warm. Since it's just you and me, we're just gonna scrape a little bit of nutmeg on top to give it just that over the top aroma note. Let's find out how it turned out this time. This is fabulous. On a cold day, we're out here in the cabin by the open fire. The wonderful cheese flavor comes through, so rich. On this nice warm brown bread, already toasted. It is fabulous. I love this. If I could eat nothing else, I would eat this all day long. I love this toasted cheese, or this Welsh rabbit as they call it later on. It's really special to come out into the cabin, cook this special dish, take some time, really kind of reflect on this whole project because it has been huge. This project has taken so much time and effort, and it's worth it. It's just this time alone. It's worth it to spend time out here. It's worth it to cook in this hearth, which is a completely different experience.